How you doing so far? Been at this several weeks. You guys look like a calm group of people. Everybody feeling good? And it's because there's been no problems over the last few weeks, right? No. We've had the storms, we've had the problems, it's all happening, but we've learned that we can still keep calm, can't we? Giving it to the Lord, casting our cares on Him, because He cares for us. He wants to carry those. We need to ask for help. Ask Him for guidance, ask Him for help, ask Him for wisdom, and also then, as we just sang, leave it there, right? Leave it to God to handle. Seek His wisdom, what He needs you to do, and leave it to Him to fix it. And then we can do what? We can move on. Grow closer to Him. Grow in our faith and keep moving forward. Now, we've looked at many different areas, areas of storms, kind of those unrelenting bombardment we get. We've looked at persecution from the outside. We've looked at all these different areas. And in each situation, we've seen that we can stay calm. But life, to me, is a little bit like Jenga. Anybody ever played Jenga? I love that game. It's just a fun little party game. You keep trying to pull the little pieces out without knocking it over, right? How many feel like you're that Jenga set that has just that one little piece at the bottom, and it's just barely holding on and teetering, and it's your turn to pull one out? Or worse yet, this is your life and somebody else is pulling them out. And you're saying, do not take that one. That one thing is the thing I need to hold on to. That's one thing I've got to have. And that's what we're going to look at today, when we have a great loss. And a loss can be a lot of things, can it? A loss can be a loss of a loved one. We're going to see that. It could be a loss of money or a job. It could be loss of health. There's so many things that our life is built on, and we say, oftentimes we look at our life and say, I can lose everything else, but I can't lose that. And guess who wants to then pull that? And sometimes it gets pulled, doesn't it? And then what do? Can you stay calm when you lose that thing you were relying on, lose that thing you love, lose that thing that was so important to you? And we're going to see 4 examples of that today. And we're going to see how in each situation the why is very important, why they were taken away, but also we're going to look at their reaction. And we're going to start with something very important, something we have to keep in mind, because it's very easy when we have a great loss, when something important to us is taken away from us, to turn to God and say, don't you understand how important that was? How can you possibly understand how much I needed that? How can you possibly know what that meant to me? Do you understand it all? And we need to start here. God does understand. And not any of that just, oh, of course, He's God. God knows everything. No, He really, really understands. Isaiah chapter 53 is all about how Christ would come and He would die on a cross for our sins, being beaten and humiliated for us. And in that passage, verse 3 tells us that He understands our sorrows. Does God understand what it means to lose His only begotten Son? Does He know, does Jesus Christ know what it means to lose a friend? Yes. He knows these things. He knows what we're going through. He knows how important it is, but sometimes He will allow these losses, won't He? And the question is, what will we do? How will we respond to this? And we're going to start with one very easy example in Mary and Martha. Let's go to John chapter 11. First of all, we need to get a little background here. Mary and Martha lived just outside Jerusalem, a place called Bethesda, and not Maryland. And they lived there, and they were very good friends of Jesus. When Jesus was in Jerusalem, He usually stopped by, usually spent time there. He was very good friends with Martha and with Mary and with their brother Lazarus, whom they all loved very much. And a message comes to Jesus while He was away, saying, Lazarus is very sick, come quickly. To which Jesus said, I'll wait. And He waited And he waited until Lazarus was dead. Then he told his disciples, let's go now. And he says something very important to them. He says, it is good for you that I was not there. So in your paper, over on the right-hand side, it says why. See that little why question? Why did Martha and Mary have to lose their brother? Was it because their brother was a sinner who needed to be punished? No. Was it because something Mary and Martha did that this great loss was brought to them? No. Was it because God didn't know what was going on? No, he knew exactly what was going on. In fact, this is one of those losses that we see over and over in the Bible where it was just part of God's plan. God just said you're going to have to go through this. And that happens. We lose people, we lose jobs, we lose things, and it's just because God has a better plan. Now, again, that's hard to believe, isn't it? But you have to remember, Jesus left too. Was it better for Jesus to leave and send the Holy Spirit than him stay there? Not a single disciple would have agreed with that, but was it better? Was it better for God to see his son die upon that cross? Yes. Again, I'm sure they wouldn't agree to that, except it's true, isn't it? And sometimes we lose things. Sometimes we have great losses in our life, and sometimes it's just because God has a plan. And in this case, that's what happened. And we're going to start the story back up again here in John chapter 11, starting in verse 20. Then Martha, as soon as she heard that Jesus was coming, went and met him, but Mary sat still in the house. Then said Martha unto Jesus, Lord. So he does recognize who he is. If you had been here, my brother had not died. So whose fault is it? Jesus, if you had been here, if you would have come when I asked you to come, if he was still breathing, he was still alive, then he'd be alive today if you had just come. But look what she says next. But I know that even now, whatsoever you will ask of God, God will give it thee. And right there we see kind of a couple of options of the way we react to things, right? We can sit there and blame God. God, if you just would have done this, if you just would have done that, if you would have just made that change or let me know or let me do something, then it could have been a different outcome. That's one way we can go. Blame God. Or we can do the other thing she did, which is what? Trust God. Now, she didn't know how far she could actually trust him, but let's read the rest of the story here. Verse 23. Jesus said unto her, your brother will rise again. He had faith in Jesus Christ. He would rise again in the end times. That's what Martha says, verse 24. Martha said unto him, I know that he shall rise again in the resurrection of the last day. Anybody who dies in Jesus Christ will come back again, and we will see them again. That's one of those things we take so much into account when we have a funeral for a Christian. How many have ever been to a funeral for a Christian? How many have ever been to a funeral for a non-Christian? Is it different? It's very different. Try preaching a funeral for a non-Christian. It ain't easy. Because all the hope and all the things you can say for those who are Christians, you cannot say for them. And it's hard. But if we're Christians, is there hope even in loss? And she had that hope. But Jesus could even go further. Verse 25, Jesus said unto her, I am the resurrection and life. He that believes in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. And whosoever lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this? She said, Yea, Lord, I believe that thou art the Christ, the Son of God, which should come into the world. I am putting your faith in him, in you. Now, the story goes further, and Mary comes out, and what do you think Mary's first response was? If you had just been here, he didn't need to die. And even when Jesus goes to the tomb, all the people around, you know what was first on their mind? If he had only been here. Sometimes we're so easy. It's so easy just to blame God. The world blames God. Why didn't you do this? Why did you allow this to happen? But if it's in accordance with God's plan, is it a good thing? Yeah. In fact, what was his plan here? Walk up to the tomb, roll the stone away, and then say what? Lazarus, come out. And he did. By the way, did Lazarus die again later? Yeah, he did. Was he resurrected physically again? No. But is he coming back again someday? How many here are going to meet Lazarus someday? Yeah. This is something we know, right? There's still hope because our trust is in who? And this is with a loved one, but this is anything. Loss of a job, loss of wealth, loss of health, any of those things. We could sit there and say, God, why did you allow this to happen? I was so trusting in that. I really needed that. Does God know what you need? And if it's part of his plan, will he see you through it? And will things be okay? Can we be calm? We can. So, your options are to blame God or trust God. Which is the path of calm and peace? Is just to trust God. If this was your will, Lord, I'm willing to go with it. But let's look at another one. Let's look at Daniel and his friends. Daniel chapter 1. You all know the story of Daniel. Daniel was a young man of God who lived in Jerusalem when Babylon came and destroyed the city and took the best and the brightest of the city of Jerusalem and took them away to Babylon, where they worshipped other gods, where they ate different things, and where they believed different things, and took them away to be a member of his court. What did Daniel and his friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, what did they lose? How many say they lost a lot? They lost their family. They'll never see their family again. They lost their temple. They lost their city. They lost their country. They lost their way of life. They lost everything. Now you can blame God, right? Because this time also, why? Why did this happen to Jerusalem? It was because of punishment of God on the nation of Israel. This was prophesied going all the way back to Isaiah. Hundreds of years, God has been saying Babylon is going to come and it's going to take you out and going to drag you away because you will not listen to me, and they did not listen to him. This was the punishment of God. Was it because of something Daniel did? No. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, anything they did? Anything their family did? No. But the nation did. And because of that, they were taken away. How many of you would be a little upset about now? If that happened to you? Yeah. Taken away to a foreign country, forced to do all these things. But what was his attitude? It could have been, I give up on God. If he's not going to protect us, if he's not going to preserve these things, if he's not going to do that, I'm out here all by myself now, I'm going to give up on God. That's one option. Is that the way of peace and calm? No. Look what Daniel did. Chapter 1, verse 1. In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, came Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem, and besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, with part of the vessels of the house of God, which they carried into the land of Shinar, to the house of his God. And he brought the vessels into the treasure house of his God. Again, another God. Who does it appear to the world is winning in this fight between the Babylonian God and Israel's God? Seems like Babylon's winning, right? How many like to be on a winner? Again, if you're Daniel, what are you saying? Hey, they're winning. They've won. They've destroyed the temple. They've taken our stuff. They've taken away their gods. I'm going to give up on this God, and I'm just going to go with that one. It's easy for us to do sometimes, isn't it? Well, if God's going to take that away, then I'm just going to do it the world's way, right? If he's going to take away my job, then I'm just going to take that other job, and I'm going to do it the way the world's way. He's going to take away my wealth, I'm going to find wealth my own way. He's going to take away my health, I'm just going to fix it my own way. I'm going to do the world's way. Is that a good idea or a bad idea? Bad idea. What's the other option? Verse 4. Jump down to verse 4. children in whom was no blemish, but well-favored and skillful in all wisdom and cunning and knowledge and understanding science, and such as had ability in them to stand in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the learnings and the tongue of the Chaldeans. That's who they were looking for, and they got at least 4. Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Verse 5. The king appointed them a daily provision of the king's meat and of the wine which he drank, so nourishing them 3 years, that at the end thereof they might stand before the king. Now among them were the children of Judah, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, also known as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Verse 7. Unto whom the prince of the eunuchs gave names, for he gave unto them Daniel named Belshazzar, and to Hananiah of Shadrach, and to Mishael, Meshach, and to Azariah, Abednego. Even took away their name. I always find it interesting that how many know Daniel's Babylonian name? Do we ever call him anything but Daniel? He wrote the book. the other guys we know is Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, but when you write the book, you don't use that name, right? You do it your way. Verse 8, but Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's meat, nor with the wine he drank. Therefore he requested of the prince of eunuchs that he might not be defiled himself. The world takes everything away. God allows the world to take everything away. One option is just to go the world's way then, right? God's going to allow the world to take it away. I'm just going to do it the world's way. Or you can be like Daniel. And what was Daniel's solution? I purpose in my heart to obey God. Sorry, must be the jacket. He purposed, and that's what we need to do. When it looks like the world's winning, we need to double down on whose side? Not on the world's side, but on God's side, and purpose in the heart. Oh yeah, you may take that away, you may take that away, you may take that away, but no matter what, I am going to trust God and I'm going to obey God. I'm going to do it His way. And by the way, how'd that turn out? They did the little test. By the way, how many of us for 3 years could just do water and vegetables? I know. But they did it, because that's what felt like God wanted to do, and they did that, and they ended up stronger and better after the test. In fact, everybody else had to eat that way too. Poor guys. So, God's way is always what? Better. And if He allows something to be taken away, that's when we need to, again, double down and say, I'm going to do it God's way, and then will God bless? Yes. He will take care of us, right? So the options are to give up on God or to follow Him even more. Purpose in our heart to keep following Him. That's the way of peace. Let's go to the next guy. You ever heard of him? Job. He didn't lose anything. This one's a little different, though. Why was he taken away from Mary and Martha for that little bit of time? Because of God's purpose. He had a purpose in doing it. Why did God allow Babylon to come and destroy His city, Jerusalem, and take them away? Well, as punishment. But it's still God's plan, wasn't it? God allowed it to happen in order to teach them. They were only going to be there 70 years, and God had a plan, but to teach them. God allowed it. This one we got a new player in the game. His name is Satan. And sometimes Satan will also come in and take things away. What purpose? Let's take a look at Job chapter 1, starting in verse 6. Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them. And the Lord said unto Satan, Whence comest thou? Then Satan answered the Lord and said, From going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down in it. By the way, does he still do that? By the way, does he still do both of those things? Is he still accountable to God? Yes. Yes, he is. Never forget that. Verse 8. And the Lord said unto Satan, Hast thou considered my servant Job, that there is none like him in the earth, a perfect and an upright man, one that feareth God and escheweth evil? Is about what's going to happen to Job because of what Job did, that he did something wrong? The answer is what? No. Is it God actually going to bring this about in his life? No. Is he going to allow Satan to do it, though? Sometimes things are taken away in order to tempt us. tempt us to turn away from God. And that's what's happening here. Verse 9, sorry. Then Satan answered the Lord and said, doth Job fear God for nothing? Hast thou not made a hedge about him and about his house and about all that he has on every side? Thou hast blessed the work of his hand, and his substance is increased in the land. But put forth thine hand now and touch all that he has, and he will curse you to your face. Take it away. God said, okay, but don't touch his health. And did Satan do that? Boy, what a day. I'm guessing nobody's had a day this bad. They come running in, right? The guy comes, hey, burned. Everything's gone. All your fields are gone. All your camels are gone. One by one. Each the servant comes. Field's gone. Next one comes. Camel's gone. Next one comes. Just one after destroyed. And then, of course, what's the last straw? Your children are all dead. He lost his family. He lost his wealth. He lost his reputation. Because everybody's like, oh, he must have deserved it, right? He lost everything. Except his health. And of course, Satan comes back to God and says, what? Well, let me take away his health too. Then he'll curse you. And he allowed him to take away his health too. Boils, painful boils all over him. Took away his health too. He said, you just can't take his life. Now, what's your options at that point? When Satan is coming after you, when Satan is taking away things in your life, when he's tempting you to turn from God, you can do what his wife said. What was Job's wife's advice to Job? Curse God and die. Let's get this over with before something happens to me. No, that's not what she said. Before something else happens, just curse God and die. And we can do that. We can say, okay, fine. God, if you're going to allow this to happen, then forget you. I'm just going to just take me out of here. That's not calm, is it? That's rash. Or you can be like Job, who says what? I brought nothing into this world, and sure as shooting, I'm taking nothing out of here. So I will bless the Lord. Even took away his health, and still he would not what? Curse God. He said, I will trust the Lord. Then friends come over, and they're blaming him. You must have done something wrong. You must have done something wrong. No way God would allow this to happen if you've done nothing wrong. And he even starts to doubt. He starts to question, maybe God, this isn't, oh, I hate this word, fair. This isn't fair. That's the way we can also go, right? But he doesn't bite. In fact, turn to Job chapter 19. Job chapter 19, verse 23. Job chapter 19, verse 23 says, oh, that my words were now written. Oh, that they were printed in a book. By the way, they are, right here. That they were graven with an iron pen and lead in the rock forever. For I know that my Redeemer lives, and that he shall stand at the latter day upon the earth. And though after my skin worms destroy this body, yet in my flesh shall I, what? See God. When the temptations come, when Satan buffets, when he takes things away and wants us to turn against God, what's the better option? Turn to God. Double down on your faith in God. Is God still in control? And he says, even if I do die, and by the way, Job is really dead. He's before Abraham. His body is done. But he knew that Jesus Christ would stand upon this earth and that he would be resurrected. Job, that body would be brought from the dust, and that with his very eyes in his flesh, he would stand and see his Redeemer who paid for his sins. Turn to faith. Faith in God, faith in his promises, faith in him, faith that he is with you and he has not abandoned you. Have faith in him and that he will do what is right. And because of that, was Job blessed? Yeah. And I know we always like to think, oh, he got 7 times this and 7 times that and 7 times this. You know what Job says is his greatest blessing through all this? At the end he says that I know you, God. I'm closer to you. And can that be the end result for us too? That we know God and trust him more? So we have just part of God's plan, part of God's punishment upon the people, and just God allowing Satan to tempt us. It can happen, can it? And each one, what's the best option? Trust God. Turn to him and bless him. Now, there's one more, though. Let's go to 2 Samuel chapter 12. What if it's our fault? Not that that would ever happen. What if God allows the loss because we were bad? He gives us that loss because he needs to teach us a lesson. And that is definitely the case with this guy. This is King David. You know the story of King David, a man after God's own heart, but also one that was, like us, given to sin. He has an affair with a married woman in order to hide the fact that she got pregnant, has her husband murdered. Those are biggies. Even in the worldly world, those are biggies, right? Did God know about it? Yeah. And because of that, God tells Nathan the prophet to tell him, verse 13. And David said unto Nathan, I have sinned against the Lord. And Nathan said unto David, the Lord also hath put away thy sin, thou shalt not die. Does God forgive? But are there sometimes consequences? Yep. Howbeit, because by this deed thou hast given great occasion to the enemies of the Lord to blaspheme, the child also that is born unto thee shall surely die. But your son is going to die. And for a parent, I can't imagine having a child die. The child was born, the child got sick, and just kept getting sicker and sicker and sicker. And what did David do? Well, David fasted and prayed. He just got on the floor and he prayed to God that he would have mercy, that he would save this child. Nobody could get near him. Nobody could touch him. And he just said, leave me here and I want to talk to God. And he talked to God day after day after day, did not shower, did not get up, did not eat, did not do anything except pray for God's mercy. And God said, no. No. The child dies. And the child did die. It's one thing to have somebody die and to lose something. It's even worse when you know it's your fault. And that's where David finds himself. And the servants start whispering because the child is now dead. And they don't want to tell him. If he was that upset when he was sick, what is he going to do? What is he going to do to himself? What is he going to do to us? What is he going to do when he finds out the child actually did die, that his prayers, the answer was no? And what did he do? Verse 20. Then David arose from the earth and washed and anointed himself and changed his clothes and came into the house of the Lord and worshipped. Does that sound like a man blaming God? Does that sound like a man angry with God? No. He worshiped God. Then he came to his own house, and when he required, they set bread before him, and he did eat. Then said his servants unto him, what thing is this that you have done? You did fast and weep for the child while he was alive, but when the child was dead, you did rise and eat bread. You should be weeping and crying now, shouldn't you, now that he's dead? But what did he say? David said, while the child was yet alive, I fasted and wept, for I said, Who can tell whether God will be gracious to me and the child may live? But now he is dead. Wherefore shall I fast? Can I bring him back again? I go to him, but he shall not return to me. And again, he has what? Hope. I know I'll see him someday. I'll be face to face with him because of God. Because of my faith in God. I know I will be with him. So what's the point? And he what? Moved on. And that's our option, isn't it? When we have a great loss, when it's our fault, where do you start? You start by saying, forgive me. Seek God's forgiveness for the sins that you have committed. And then when the consequences come, should we sit there and put up a fight and say it's unfair? No. God's consequences are fair, aren't they? Can we ask for his mercy? Absolutely. But if he says no, you need to take this loss, what do? Feel guilty the rest of our life? Beat ourselves up the rest of our life? Be angry with God the rest of our life? What's the answer? No. God's still in heaven. God's still God. I will worship him. And I will move on. These are amazing feats, aren't they? Can we do that? Yes, we can with God's help. As we conclude here, I want to get to two passages here. First, let's go to Genesis 50, verse 20. Another guy that lost everything because of jealous brothers. Joseph. How did he handle it? Amazing. Did he get angry with God? Did he shut down? Did he get even? No. He just trusted God, didn't he? Then he was falsely accused of something he didn't do. Did he throw a fit then? No, he just trusted God. He got stuck in prison 2 years longer than he really should have. What did he do? Just trusted God, right? And even when his father died in Egypt, and all his brothers are freaking out, now that dad's dead, he's going to kill us, right? But what does Joseph say? Genesis chapter 50, verse 20. But as for you, you thought evil against me, but God meant it unto good, to bring to pass as it is this day, to save much people alive. In other words, you meant it for evil, but God meant it for what? So, if you have a loss and it's because of the world, if it's because of decisions of other people, if it is because of the things of this world, can God turn evil into good? Not only can he, will God turn evil into good? So if it's because of the things that we do, or the things this world does, or because of those kinds of things that you have a loss, know that God will turn it into good. But what if it's God's doing? What does this verse say? All things work together for good to those who love God and are called according to his purpose. So he will, of course, if God has brought it out, if God has done this thing, then it is also what? Good. Because what's the one thing you know you will never lose? Him. Right? You'll always have that foundation. And yes, we may lose things in this world for a variety of reasons. And some are harder to take than others. Some seem like they're foundations, and we just seems like we'll never get by without them. But who will always be there? That true foundation, Jesus Christ. God will be there, and he will never leave us nor forsake us. We will never lose God. Amen? So let's remember that. And then can we stay what? Keep calm. We're going to lose things. But we'll never lose God. Put your trust in him. Just put your faith in him, your trust in him, follow him, do what is right, and just let him work. And he will bring it to good. Amen?